have 15 minutes for the presentation. You can use the function raise your hand. So let's start. Our first speakers are Yaroslav Kuzminov, academic supervisor of High School of Economics, and Kruchinska Ekaterina, director of Academic Supervisors Support Office. Their presentation is devoted to large language models. So, colleagues, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anna. So we'll upload my presentation. I hope you can see my our slides. So we'll be talking about the hottest topic in the academic circles and in literature, which usually focus on politics. So AI. Over the past 3 years, based on my observations, that's come to the foreground. That's on the front burner. And that is an all-encompassing topic that applies to STEM technology, to the economy, ethics. So it's a cross-cutting topic. There are a lot of issues and disciplines that overlap. AI, that's on the one hand, but on the other hand, as many participants see, AI can disrupt labor in a number of professions. It can force some of the professions to die. It can also boost labor productivity multiple times. Now, the key issue here is how can we use AI professionally? Can AI bring net profit to companies? So I'll give you the definition of the first one. What is the professional usage of AI? We believe this is when you can trust some task to it, and you won't need to clean up after AI. You won't need to redo it after AI. Currently, the average user of AI, if it's not an amateur, if it's not a layman, you know, in 50% of the cases, you will have to rework the outcomes. Well, that's an indication of where we are at the moment. So this usage of AI provides for a better productivity so that we don't waste time on fact checking. So versus fact checking when you check the outcomes of the translation, for example, of a talented student, but who still makes mistakes. So we'll look at the different scenarios, different abilities. We'll look at 4 domains that rely on global statistics. And we're also tapped into surveys. That was done by the High School of Economics. We tested LLMs, 4 LLMs, GPT-4, GPT-4o, GigaChat, PO, and GigaChat Max. So we had a few benchmarks, and Ekaterina will focus more on that. And we also used regression-based evaluation of LLMs on professional benchmark tasks. Look at the different answers, and we look at what is significant for failures of the models. What can LLMs give us in professional terms? We are at a critical juncture. Global GDP growth is slowing, and that puts pressure on finding new sources of economic growth. Generative AI is seen as a potential catalyst, but its true value remains to be determined. While initial projections are noteworthy, we must adopt a realistic perspective, evidence-based perspective. Let's look at some similar instances in the past. We have a choice, uncertain choice. So either AI is the so-called philosopher's stone, or it's a railway. I'd like to remind you that the philosopher's stone was the first mass investment with a lot of expectations from European monarchies. They invested money worth of the funds needed to maintain an army over the few years, and the effect was zero, zilch, nada. But there are externalities, that help to develop chemistry. And in contrast with that, we have railways. It's a simple concept that was used for practical applications, and that revolutionized transportation and drove economic expansion unseen, and it was not projected 10 years before this technology came into place. Well, I will pick up where Yaroslav left, and let's look at the return from AI. Is it really the philosopher's stone, which has not brought any benefits, or is it the railway, which we still leverage today and quite successfully? So there are some projections. We have statistics, and they just show us the market. In 2024, we've seen an increase in 11 times versus 2020. And these figures are staggering. There's a huge increase. But is there a substantiation? We can see that the companies are introducing more and more technologies. They reorient labor to just servicing LLMs and generative models, and most likely will continue to work in this. But there are other there's another other pieces of empirical evidence, and we rely not just on the statistics, but also on the data of the survey, on the research that was presented at the Data Fusion Conference. That's the research with a sample of 4,000 students on the use of AI. What we can see here is that the biggest risk that the companies and the people see in the use of AI, that's security and inaccuracy, which means that some of the answers will not be accurate enough. And the probability is very high, and people see that it's highly relevant. And the improvement in labor productivity that we've seen on the previous chart could be quite speculative, or we cannot really trust it fully. Is there any substantiation? Now, we also put a question: what is your assessment of the probability that AI will replace your future profession within the next 10 years? So these are bachelor degree students, master degree students. So the you can see that just a few students believe that, so the few students believe that they will be replaced by AI. That's just about 20%. So they don't believe there's going to be a revolution in the labor market. Young people look at the state of LLMs right now, and they use them in 80% of the cases. So at least once a month for their studies. The next slide shows that if we look at the econometric analysis, we can see that there are big risks in terms of distrust to AI, in terms of ethics and honesty. LLMs often face hallucinations, and hallucinations could provide you anything but the truth, and that places a lot of ethical constraints, particularly on accuracy, which cast doubt on the explosive growth of AI and expected returns for institutions. If you sum up what we said before, there is indeed a roadmap of how AI moved forward. We had a lot of expectations in 2024 that will reshape the labor market and the added value chain for the companies, but currently we are where we are. It's still more of a leisure, and it can we really talk about in professional use? Will it disrupt the world, or is it just the philosopher's stone and people will waste money without actual return? We've seen a boom in LLMs who can speculate. And, it's prospects of their application still vague. Can they be really lucrative? That's the big question. We can empirically prove that the problem is there. So the capital investments of companies can become an issue, and that can turn into the philosopher's stone dilemma and will not deliver any returns. But we don't want to keep it at the hypothesis level. We will try to prove it through our empirical research. So what we heard today is that there are benchmarks, and the benchmarks are designed to evaluate LLMs across a variety of tasks. Together with our staff from the High School of Economics and other experts, we've come up with our own professional benchmarks. It relies not just on knowledge, it's a quasi-test on whether this model can be applied to professional tasks. Based on our methodology, on Bloom's taxonomy, it's a closed-end benchmark for 13,000 questions, and we tested it on the models mentioned by Yaroslav. So we've validated each of the questions, and here we have this reference to the publication, and that's how we described our benchmark. So each of the question was validated by the experts, the subject matter experts and econometrics experts. So there are a few hypotheses. Hypothesis number one, the number of parameters of models has a low elasticity to difficulty and taxonomy of even the right answer. And models actually can have a lot of variables. Then hypothesis number two, difficulty and taxonomy under Bloom, is something that we relied on, has low effect on the correctness of the answer. And both hypotheses have been proven to be true. And hypothesis number three, the multiple choice, is the factor to decrease the number of right answers. So all of these three hypotheses are symbolic of the fact that this model, Russian LLMs and foreign LLMs, they cannot reply to professional questions in a consistent way. So the criteria has not been met. So here are some of the criteria, like GigaChat Pro, GPT-4, GigaChat Pro, and there is no linear trend towards a more complex or simpler answer. The LLM can find it difficult to reply a difficult and a simple question. Is there any professional anywhere around sitting in the same room, in the same audience, who is not aware of the basics, just the same as he is not aware of high brow stuff? So it means that the professionalism criteria has not been met. But let's look at the statistics. Here is the test that we did. The dependent variable was the status of the model. Did it answer the question or no? And what we see is that the taxonomy is only significant in one case for GigaChat, but the effect is very small. So we can prove statistically that it's difficult for the model to reply who Christopher Columbus is, simple questions, and also difficult for it to reply to a professional question of how you need to act in a professional setting, because we don't really know in which questions we can trust the LLMs. Now, hypothesis number two. So there's a non-linear story of which questions it's easier for it to answer. And this is the coefficient that we look at. And it gives us an answer to the question of whether what we're facing right now is it's a valuable tool that can be used instead of the person. Right now, we cannot give we cannot substantiate this claim. And the third one, having limitations in unorthodox multitask environments and settings, we can see that we have negative coefficients. When all the things are equal, if there's a multiple answer, if there are several answers, then the several choices, then the model will not be able to give a single correct answer. So, there will be more issues in the case of multiple answers versus single answer questions. And that means that the model cannot really orient itself. So we've tested the latest models. And we can see that for GigaChat, you know, the share of the right answers was 49%. And for ChatGPT, that's 51%. And the increase would be 5% versus ChatGPT 4. And in the case of GigaChat, it's just a 10% increase to the previous model. It means that there is a lot of constraints in terms of the data collection. And a simple increase of the parameters doesn't mean that the model would be more reliable in terms of its correctness and accuracy of the answers. And we can see that this trend uh, can be proved. And the roadmap that I showed, has not led us to the railroad scenario. So we're still moving along the path towards the philosopher's stone because the significance of the results has not proven to be true with the new releases. Over to you, Mr. Kuzminov. Well, we still have a few suggestions of how we can improve it and act at a faster pace to, make it more uh, professionally fit. First, fundamental knowledge. We need to identify the core of knowledge, and within that, the LLMs won't be able to make any mistakes. The architecture of LLM is as follows. The probability of hallucinations, the probability of error is the same. So we have, and that probability is the same in the basics and in professional topics. So we need to identify the core, and this component may rely not on LLM, but some other architecture. There are different types. You have fine-tuning, have RAG, retrieval augmented, and within you have the pre-train lake, which shows that the more information we upload, or usually most of that has a layman's character, and you don't have any core there. The LLM models is still a collection of conventional mainstream opinions, while a professional is a person who can counter mainstream opinions, who can present an unorthodox opinion. That's what they're paid for. We also need to come up with industrial benchmarks. All or almost all benchmarks is just, a set of benchmark answers. As for the industries, we have any benchmarks for professional use? No. But if we don't see them, then AI will just be a leisure and or just a domain for routine operations. But none of the employers will not be able to cut their expenses using AI-driven models. So what is an industrial benchmark? You need to be able to address a specific task, starting from the simplest one, the routine ones. So we have not seen a single benchmark, but they might emerge in the next 1 to 2 years. Can we test it in various settings? Professionals always find themselves in a situation of uncertainty. We need to come up with stress tests for the model. And that's up to the industry, but it needs to work together with the academia in a very close manner. We still have a conviction that there's a future for AI, that it's not the philosopher's stone, but we need to switch to new rails, new tracks. The logic, the rationale needs to be a different one. If we don't do that, then it's going to be just a philosopher's stone. That's it. Thank you. Thank you for the new sobering presentation. So the future lies with the GigaChat, ChatGPT, big models. Or are there specialized industries or task-specific models for big companies, maybe? GigaChat, ChatGPT, and other models, they serve the function of communication. They replace a human in communication with the other humans. And there's a lot of space for application and maintaining conversation, finding something out from a person before the professional uh, talks to this individual. So this feature cannot be overcome. So there's an orchestra of several models, and we can maybe, figure out a function where it can be played as a professional lawyer or an accountant. So LLM models which exist on their own will find just one niche. It's just gonna replace Wikipedia, And professionally, we can see that the simplest task can be resolved, but it's not addressed through generative models. Simple models come into play, and they rely on a different architecture. Maybe Katerina can add a few points. Thank you for this excellent question. When we talk to major customers and big corporates, we conducted a few stress tests on whether this model is going to work in professional settings. The rule of thumb, the smaller the model, the better it will work for specialized cause, so specialized objectives. So in terms of the longer term objectives, prospects, LLMs will, be clickbaiting. They will can be good interlocutors, conversationalists. But if we introduce a prof criteria of professionalism, then we need some constraints of what the model can do and not.
Well, quantitatively, it's very hard to attain that, and it's hard to retrain LLMs. So probably we will develop small-scale specialist models that are cheaper and easier to train because they contain less unnecessary content. Yes, thank you. And Alicia Myber also has a question, but please be brief because we're time. Yes, thank you. Has been very interesting. The most curious to me was the outcomes of the student survey, they say that LLM will replace them, which is curious, but the replacement term, replace is a very hard word, I think, and I've got two questions. First of all, you might have asked students whether they use LLMs their daily educational routines. If they use them more often, they might figure that those would supersede them. And second, like 10 years, is your guess? What is your reckoning? 10 years, your profession will be absolutely different. Like marketing 20 years ago and marketing today are two big differences. So with a different set of skills. Thank you, Olesha. We have surveyed students and interviewed them just before making this report, and actually it's very curious with a lot of questions that emerged, and we will make a publication in June, and I could share the outcomes with you. Like we look at the socio-demographic characteristics of students and the major of students and the course, the department, and all that influences their answers, and where they use artificial intelligence frequently and where they have any fears, and what the professional skills of theirs are. And on Monday, we'll do an announcement on the HSC website, and there'll be some presentation uploaded on the website with some statistics. Descriptive one.
It was exciting presentation, which gives us not that optimistic view on the internet, on the AI, and I hope the intensive discussion of the AI from different sides will help us to be more to have more knowledge about our future. Okay, so at this point, let me invite our next speaker. This is Caetano Peña from CGE from Brazil. So Caetano, the floor is yours. Please go ahead and share with your presentation.
Hi, good morning from Brazil. Good afternoon to everyone. Let me share my screen. Just a moment.
Екатерина, ваш надо выключить. Да, спасибо.
Just a second. So do you see my screen right?
Yes, it's fine. Thank you. Please go ahead.
So I'm Caetano Pena. I'm one of the directors of the Center for Strategic Studies and Management in Brazil. We are affiliated, supervised by the Ministry of Science and Technology. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present my work. This is more of a personal work, not the outcome of any studies at CGE, although it relates also to our work on artificial intelligence. CGE was responsible for supporting the Brazilian government in the development of the Brazilian AI plan launched 9 months ago and is already underway. What I will discuss here is a bit of my work in the past years on the political economy of technical change and the geopolitics of innovation strategies. So it's a reflection, very different from the previous presentation. It's a qualitative reflection on whether we are living a new political economy after the pandemic and maybe in the past 10 years, and what does it mean in terms of the governance of artificial intelligence. So my conceptual basis for this reflection are twofold. First is the work from Carlota Perez on technological revolutions and financial capital. She is a neo-Schumpeterian scholar who draws on and develops and expands the Kontradiev view of long cycles. and discusses the dynamic of technological revolutions. The second is Karl Polanyi's seminal work, The Great Transformation, and especially his view on the double movement of capitalist economies. And I will unpack this conceptual anchoring going further here. But I put forth two propositions. The first is that from this Polanyian perspective, since the 2000s and more, so after the great financial crisis of 2007, 2008, the world is moving toward a period of proactive state, which is most visible in the level of political and policy discourse. And that has accelerated in recent years with the tensions between China and the US. This is increasingly put into action to achieve geopolitical and geoeconomic goals. The second is that from a Peresian perspective, this new proactive role calls for specific types of regulations and investments to address the technological externalities and social inequalities caused by and associated to digital technologies, and now in the past 7 years or so, especially associated with artificial intelligence, which in this view is part of the fifth technological revolution, which I will explain soon. So let me unpack the first proposition. What is the Polanyian pendulum? Polanyi, in his work, argued that contradictory forces govern the capitalist development process in a dialectical process. So whenever the market expands itself continuously, this movement is met by a counter movement checking the expansion in definite direction. So there is no such thing as fully free market, but the free market is continuously being kept in check through some contradictory forces that is pro-state and state-led. So he also continues and say, one force is based on liberalizing principles that promote the expansion of free markets. The other is based on social self-protection principles that keep this expansion constantly in check to protect society from the, as he put, the ravages of this free market satanic mill. So whenever the market expands too much and then creates problems, social unrest, even wars, then you need some regulatory forces from the state to counter that movement. And there are two interpretations for this double movement. One is that in every period, every time, right now, we have the two forces in action. So we have the free market force, but we have also the regulation, the pro-state force. So it is a dialectic movement constantly being at work. The second is that you can abstract from what is happening at the micro level to understand that there is a macro spirit of time, and you have periods when you have free market dominant, and you have periods when you have pro-state policies dominant. So this is what is interpreted as a pendulum that sometimes bends towards free market, sometimes bends towards pro-state and regulation. So he even argues, he foresees that, and that is a stream of work since the publication in 1944 that tries to identify this secular pendulum. I quote, he says, various countries of different types pass through a period of free trade and laissez-faire, followed by a period of anti-liberal legislation. It would be easy to produce a regular calendar setting out the years in which analogous changes occurred in various countries. So I did that exercise based on several authors that looked at that, and I won't to go into the details of the method, but it's very qualitative method. We could say that we have 3 laissez-faire periods in capitalism and 4 social self-protection periods. And since 2010, we are entering, of course, it's not still so dominant, but I think in the past, since let's say the 2020s is even stronger, we have this social self-protection. That's when national interests flourish and less multilateralism, more realism, and so on in the international domain. So in this 4th period of nationalist and state-centered self-protection, it seems to have been started around 2010 after the great financial crisis, but it accelerated in the pandemic. That's my argument. So the new coronavirus pandemic has acted as a magnifying glass to this these trends. So we could see, I wrote that another policy paper in 2021 for the Brazilian Center for International Relations, SEBRE, where I argued that the manufacturing global chains overly dependent on China would eventually be a central target for national policies. And this is what we're seeing right now, even stronger with Trump. The focus of economic policies will be upgrading industrial structures and reshoring value chains. And we can see that, for instance, after the Draghi report in Europe being the focus of the European Union, we can see that the call for strategic autonomy, open strategic autonomy in the European Union also as a reflection of that. And also I argued that industrial and innovation policies will become increasingly mission-oriented, that is, aimed at not only seizing technological opportunities, but also contributing to the solution of urgent societal challenges and national goals, specifically, nationally centered missions. Finally, as a consequence of this US-China FOID and competition, the policy space for multilateral governance of digital technologies, and here I include AI, would be diminished. And that's what we're seeing. And we see increasingly a dispute, and I think countries will most likely avoid taking sides, but in the end, they will be forced into taking sides. And the question is to what extent countries may continue non-aligned to either US or to China. So this new activist role of the state in the innovation technological process is most visible in the policy discourse. And we can see if we map, there is a Overton database, and if we look for some expressions, we can see that they boomed. This is also from this article of mine. It should be updated, but I expect it to have increased. But for instance, technological sovereignty from 2019, it has boomed. Value chain industrial policy increasingly on the agenda, and mission-oriented policy, although it has decreased, my expectation by looking, I'm not showing it here, academic articles and newspaper articles, they have increased as well. Behind this trade war between US and China, we have deep technological industrial disputes, especially over technical standards. The decoupling between those countries is an ongoing ambition, but it's very hard to achieve. And as we were already seeing with the Trump tariffs, they will be costly to everyone. That will be quite a dispute and a rupture that won't be easy, not only to the US and Chinese population, but to all the world. We have this free market globalizations, but now we are going to the industrial innovation policies. There is in the 90s, the Asian economies benefited from a new international division of labor, the GFC, the Great Financial Crisis of 2008 was a wake-up call for Western economies that started to say, okay, we have not benefited as much as Asian economies and China from this new division of labors. We need to reindustrialize, and we need manufacturing to create jobs. So the US Recovery and Reinvestment Act, the Partnership for Advanced Manufacturing, the CHIPS Act, the Biden Plan, the Inflation Reduction Act more recently. In Germany, all the new high-tech strategies that have been upgraded and updated, the industrial strategies from the United Kingdom, and the list goes on. Also, China, with its vision to become the manufacturing powerhouse and the innovation country, most innovative country in the world by 2049, 100 years of the Chinese Revolution, the Belt and Road initiatives. So we have many industrial strategies that are very much centered on the nation states. These discourses and policy planning exposes a tension between the interests and strategies of those different countries in terms of technological sovereignty, while revealing a new approach to the role of the state. Beyond this rhetoric of political discourse and the action of active investments in new industries and technologies, what is the role of the state in the governance and regulation of digital technologies and AI? So that's the question I raised for the second part. So what's the role of the state, this proactive role of the state? What is its role to govern digital technologies and AI in particular? So we then draw from Carlota Perez and her techno-economic cycle of technological revolutions. Okay, I'll be finishing soon. So we have Paris argues that we have passed 5 technological revolutions since the Industrial Revolution. And in the past 40 years, we are in the 5th great surge of development. So the 5th in the bottom row, it is the age of information telecommunications. It started in the US, it spread to other countries, and is marked by the Intel microprocessor. And in this view, artificial intelligence is the third small wave of the 5th revolution. It is based on hardware, now graphic processors, and data. So these are the products and chip inputs in the Paris framework. Each technological revolution, surge of development, diffuses through 2 parts. The first half is marked by financial capital, free market. The second one, the deployment period, by pro-state policies. So in the 5th, we are, since the crash of the internet and the second crisis, the great financial crisis, we are still in this verge of the deployment period. That's when the state becomes active. I'll be fast so I can finish my argument. So she argues that the role of the state changes from a non-interventionist free market approach in the first half to a more interventionist, protectionist part. That's when the state becomes entrepreneurial, to quote Mariana Mazzucato. Midway through the revolution, we need a new role of the state, an active approach to address the externalities, the problems created by the new technologies, or to put in the Polonian language, to protect society from the perils of the free market satanic mill. We need a new regulatory framework to address externalities of this 5th revolution. We saw that in the past, like in the New Deal, in the 4th revolution. We've seen also the balance of countervailing forces where big governments cooperated with big corporations and big labor to create the golden age of capitalism. So just to conclude my concluding remarks, the digital technology and especially AI result in many different problems, issues that need to be governed and regulated. Ethical, like the right to privacy and data confidentiality, proprietary ownership and access to data, degree of autonomies of machines, who is to blame when there is a problem, normative, whether we're going to use open or proprietary standards and who is going to own those standards, and the issue of compatibility and retrofitting legacy systems, including for IoT, Internet of Things. Techno-economic, how do you include people that are being excluded from the labor market due to machines? And social environmental, we know that AI is very intensive in energy and other natural resources like water. And how do we address that? We need a new regulatory role, but the space for a global framework has been diminished. So the question here is whether we will be living in this potentially golden age where we're going to find a way to address those issues and create welfare to everybody to benefit from the benefits of artificial intelligence, or we're going to see a gilded age where concentration of the benefits will be at the top of the pyramid on the billionaires who own the technological firms, and that will be prone to, instead of just this technological and geopolitical new Cold War disputes, but actually open wars might be the outcome of a non-regulation of these technologies and increasing competition. So what we need is actually to have a third way, not one that is centered on the dispute on the China or US, but actually we need regulation that might be at a global level. And to that end, I believe that the BRICS countries, they represent an alternative for the regulation. Thank you. I'm sorry to have rushed. Thank you again for the opportunity, and I'm here to take questions if there are any. Thank you very much.
There are no questions. One small question from me. Do you think if AI has an opportunity to be developed in such a fragmented world?
Yes, I think that there will be increasing costs, repeating costs that would be difficult. The second is that I think there is a trade-off between regulating it for, let's say, for countries like Brazil, who is not competing with the US or China or for the AI leadership, countries that are catching up. If you regulate them to address those issues nationally only, then you won't be able to catch up and develop as fast. So I think that it's really a dilemma on how to have ethical, let's say, and responsible AI development, and have benefits for the population and have it a fast development, because the potential for AI not only to create new jobs is huge, but we have also, although AI is resource intensive and energy intensive, it is also a potential part of the solution for environmental problems, for instance. So we need that development to be fast, but how to balance the regulation and that potential is the question. So there is no easy answer to your question, but I think it's basically difficult to foresee a fast development again without regulation.
Okay, thank you. And we have one more question from Attila Havash. Attila, please, one first question.
Yeah, it's an observation or a piece of information. 2 years ago, we have developed so-called multi-level context scenarios for EU R&I or STI policies. We also started with the concept of multipolar world as opposed to bipolar or the US dominant. And we considered eventually 3 different scenarios, whether there is genuine collaboration between the poles, whether there is a limited cooperation with some poles, or whether there is open hostility among at least one pole. I didn't, on purpose, we didn't name countries. And I think your line of argument can be extended by considering these different options. So if you don't mind, I would send you that paper. Thank you.
No,
Okay.
I will be very thankful if you can share with me. I will send you my email by chat here. I am curious to read it. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kaitan, a lot. I think we can move on. Our next speaker is Olesya Maybach, head of Foresight Research Methodology and Organization Unit in High School of Economics. So, Olesya, the floor is yours.
Здравствуйте. Подскажите, пожалуйста, вы видите мой экран?
Да, теперь видим, но не по...
See my screen? Yes. And it's not full screen. What about now? Is it full screen now? Yes. Good afternoon. With huge pleasure, I'll tell you about our project that is dedicated to foresight agenda for the artificial foresight study of research agenda for AI. And here we have a lot of methodological peculiarities, and the findings are so curious. I want to tell you about them. For those participating in our foresight symposium, there's no need to tell what foresight is and what its principles, underlying principles are. But by and large, we profess a classical approach, and when we work with a specific sphere, we kind of look at man challenges and how they impact the global economy, and we look at the markets and their demands, and look at the technologies that help respond, satisfy them. We look at studies and personnel, etc. Last year, we received a request for a prompt study on AI, and we were tasked with producing an express foresight toolkit that would be useful, interesting, but still be based on the foresight principles. And it was an interactive brainstorming process And Sberbank also participated actively, as well as Coordination Center of the Federal Government of Russia. And after our deliberating, we came up with the following main results. Basing on that, we started building our methodology. By and large, we figured that we need to establish a system of priorities, like what specific fields of research are most relevant for this country. And was not the main question. Like an in-depth analysis of AI's sphere and demand for that were secondary goals, but the main goal of ours was the set of priorities. And this was a very specific thing, as we looked at exploratory and fundamental research, and we looked at basic AI studies, but we cut off and ignored AI research, like if business companies look for some tool. This is kind of applied nature, and exploratory investigation or research is something in between the applied and fundamental. So we focused on exploratory and basic research, and we wanted to figure what our starting point must be. We kind of looked at sphere of research of ours that was subject to some influences, and they drove the development of AI itself and conditioned the way the research of AI proceeded. This is a very dynamic and rapidly advancing sphere. DeepSeek appeared several months ago, and lots of things happened since then. And ChatGPT has been around for a couple of years only, and it has impacted the sphere of research a lot. So AI is a rapidly developing field, and actually some algorithm, away from an algorithm to some practical application is now very short. So these were the settings of ours, and the sphere is changing rapidly, and we're after scientific and academic things. And when we tried to define how we should study this sphere, so that we can produce the priorities for research, made several steps. When we speak about a very quick study, that means that we had to quickly define the pool of people participating. We needed people with expertise, and we were to be confident of them. To our full confidence. Those were the people that had publications with masteries and Scopus track record and leading business representatives and the authorities representatives. We wanted our stakeholders to be a diverse patchwork. So all in all, we had at the first 4 stages around 50 people participating. At the 5th stage, we further extended the makeup, but the core was comprised by those 50 people or experts, and definitely we needed to carefully prepare in order to have some food for thought to discuss with experts.
So we looked at the markets, we looked at the trends to make sure that we have enough stuff to start discussions. So we first looked at the big challenges, then we looked at the markets, and once we study AI, we have to move away from that conventional model. AI is an area where any new invention, any new algorithm, that's something that will be studied and embraced by the business. So there's so much demand for the new tools, and we don't really need to study demand. We can assume that there will be demand. Demand will be high. And we can focus on the evolution of research. And we have to set the criteria of how to define the most promising, the most exciting ones. And we designed a system of criteria. Maybe it's probability of breakthroughs, high level of infrastructure, capacity level. So this science-focused approach was really helpful. Now we looked and scanned different documents from different countries. We looked at the roadmaps of different countries on AI. And most of the countries, when in their strategic priorities, they use the business language, the business terminology, like AI for agriculture, AI for biotechnology. But some countries use not the applications, they use the what we can say about the AI from developing insights. It's all about the evolution of AI. It's China, and I think Russia is trying to look at the AI not through the applications, but through its internal growth. There are some algorithms, etc. So we did some interviews. We had a few foresight sessions, and we did some surveys to pick the most important ones. So we have a three-tiered classification, and you can see them level by level. So we have some research tasks, which is a very specific element of the research. And eventually we have the decision, we made the decision not to look at humanities, or we believe it's an area which requires further research. So that requires a different lens, different optics. We also need to look at some of the sub areas, how much does it impact the outer world? And this classification shows that some of these sub areas are important for AI itself. That's like benchmarks. So today we discussed the importance of benchmarks. They don't save the world, but they are important to make sure that AI can progress in a steadfast manner, in a steady manner. But there are areas which can disrupt the world, which can create new business models. LLMs is the area for that. And we had a report today on how LLMs can have an impact on your profession, whether they can make a difference or not. Well, or whether it could drive incremental innovation, which would improve your efficiency, business processes, and production, whatever. Now, the findings of this research has brought us to some insights, and you can see them right now on the screen. Multimodal data are important, and they can accelerate the collection of a different set of results. Today, during this conference and in our interviews, the experts say that multimodal data, that's our target. Ethics, trust, security, these are all drivers of paramount importance. If you have a security breach, if trust is down, then people will not share the data, and there might be some risks around that. Now, what's peculiar about it is, a year has passed, and we've discussed what's changed. We can see that the research goals that were deemed to be prospective and promising, they've yielded some important aha moments, like AI scientist. And that's something that we talked about last year. And, we're getting new scientific publications, and that has helped to come up with a portrait of a data scientist. So we'll continue to refine our research methodology going forward. Thank you.
To Alicia. No, I think there is any question, so I think we can move on because we are running out of time. So our last speaker is Orçun Sarıtas from Rochester Institute of Technology of Dubai, who will tell us about AI abilities for law enforcement. Orçun, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Anna. Great to be here. You see my slides now?
Yes, sir.
HSE basically, so I'm still using my Pakrovka background. So I'm proud to be a part of the HSE still as of today. So I think our collaboration and friendship will last forever. So today I'll speak briefly about exploring AI for law enforcement. So this is actually going to be a complementary discussion to what has been presented so far. So we've been discussing different aspects of AI. What I would like to cover in this short presentation is some of the aspects actually the AI can influence our lives, because it is actually certainly transforming our lives, and sometimes in a positive way, as we've just heard, or sometimes in a negative way. And this creates, of course, some consequences for our lives. So I'd like to just support this kind of a background with the case of law enforcement and policing. So some of the ideas I'll present here are based on several workshops and discussions with the Interpol and also Dubai Police, which I've been collaborating recently, but not necessarily reflect their opinions. So as we know, AI revolutionized actually law enforcement in terms of prevention, investigation, and safety. We also know that when it comes into some, harmful hands, it may actually create also some problems for our society. So there are definitely great transformative potentials for counterterrorism and policing in terms of using AI. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. We know already that, I have been working with HSE since 2012, and now I'm based in Dubai. I'm working as a professor of future foresight and strategic planning at the Rochester Institute of Technology. So I'd like to just begin with a quick glimpse into 2035 and what would expect us by that time. So we may see actually some applications of AI, such as in predictive policing, where AI might predict crime hotspots with 90% accuracy, which is actually a great improvement from our time. We may see some AI-enhanced surveillance systems, facial recognition, identified suspects in real time, for example, and improvements in cybersecurity. So AI basically towards 75% of cyber attacks on critical infrastructure. So we can see that actually overall AI may help us to cut crime by 50% by that time. As you remember, for a while, I've been discussing the tripling future frontiers which are in front of us. So our world is basically tripling. So both in the geopolitical space, also in the virtual space with digitalization, AI, and in the space, outer space, out of our planet. So all these are actually, again, create some opportunities and threats for us. So that is why it's important for us to look at this holistic picture. If you look at the evolving world of the digital world and AI, we can see that there's a different map, obviously, in front of us. And that map is very different from the physical or a geopolitical map we see in front of us. So here, some countries are bigger, some countries are smaller, some countries are more active, the others are less active. But in any case, the world of digitalization and AI are growing, as we've been listening since the beginning of the day. So we see that there's data explosion, 2.5 quintillion bytes daily. So I don't know how many zeros you need to add actually to reach to that figure. And the greater connectivity with 50 billion connected devices and AI adoption, which has already reached to 40% of all enterprises. So of course, this process, this world is a different one. And it is one which we cannot see with bare eyes, but we spend actually almost half of our productive times during a day. So during those workshops and activities, as I said, we have identified some AI-enabled security risks and threats in those three different frontiers. So we can see that in today's world, we may be threatened by some resource wars. Resources are, critical and they are very scarce, and there's a big competition for that. We see nuclear threats, cyber terrorism, disinformation, financial market manipulation. So these are all the threats we are facing, and these are now very much enabled by AI. And on the virtual world and digital world, we can see some potential risks and threats like metaverse radicalization, virtual terrorist camps, biohacking, autonomous weapons, and cyber sabotage, and all the other virtual assassinations, for example. And also the AI may create some security risks and threats in the space, like space resource theft, communication service disruption, and the satellite hijacking, for example. These are some of the different or new types of risks and threats we may see in coming years. And of course, we need to do a scenario-based work. Scenario-based work is necessary because there's a great complexity and uncertainty, which is growing all the time, and especially in the world where we are challenged by these tripling frontiers. So in those scenarios, what we see that there are critical uncertainties about the AI, how it will be used, perceived, and governed in counterterrorism, and how it will actually affect our lives. Will AI be seen as a trusted friend, enabling and augmenting law enforcement, or an enemy as a source of threats and vulnerabilities, or maybe both? So it is important to see what would be the role of AI in our lives. And the second big question is, what would be our relationship with AI? Will AI remain as a human-controlled system, humans in charge of decisions and operations, or will it become autonomous, AI systems making independent decisions? So this actually leads us to 4 different scenarios for the future. So you can see that on the horizontal axis, we have more autonomous AI and versus human-controlled AI. And on the vertical one, we see AI is a friend and AI is an enemy, which brings us to those 4 different scenarios. Of course, a desirable scenario in this could be considered where AI is a friend and it actually remains human-controlled, or those systems which takes human at the center, like human-focused systems. I think this is how the role of AI should be. Human should still be at the center. Those systems should be more human-centric, so we can develop some augmented intelligence. And with human oversight, we can ensure accountability, increased efficiency and precision, and ethical AI is a trusted partner. On the opposite side, we can see that AI is also developing very fast. And some people are talking about super AI, for example, artificial superintelligence, which I will tell in a minute what it is. So in that case, actually AI capacity can overtake human capacity. And then AI actually can still be friendly with us, but there might be also some cases where we might see AI as a potential threat. And in an opposite scenario, we can see that there will be autonomous and uncontrollable AI systems, AI weaponization, dual use of AI cause those threats by adversaries and police, and raw AI causes ethical and existential crisis. And the other two scenarios are combinations of them, which I won't elaborate for this presentation. So what we see is that it is important to develop collective human artificial intelligence systems. In other words, human-centric systems. So we are hearing these days a lot about artificial intelligence, and today's artificial intelligence is very much developed to resemble human intelligence. But we can actually see that the artificial intelligence may go beyond, and in a few years' time, most likely, we'll be talking about some human intelligence enhancement systems, because the human actually should be able to cope with all this, complex ecosystem where there are so many different, developments, increasing uncertainty, and we shouldn't be overwhelmed with what is happening around us. Instead, we should be able to have more control. So we may hear more about technologies which may enhance us as humans physically, mentally, cognitively. So these are actually the technologies which are going to come to our agenda, and we'll be looking for some ways on how not to be out of the game. So three types of artificial intelligence we can talk about today. What we see around us right now is artificial narrow intelligence. So this is very much based on machine learning technologies. And today's AI actually specialized in one area and solves one problem. But in the next few years' time, we may see a new improvement or update or generation of artificial intelligence, which is artificial general intelligence, and it is based on machine intelligence, and it refers to a computer that is smart as a human across the board. So what is smart as human means actually it may undertake multiple tasks, so multitasking, and it may also actually start coming to a point where the AI can make some decisions. And as it moves into artificial superintelligence, which is stage 3, and it is yet to come, so there are several probably years, maybe a decade in front of us for that, where we'll see those conscious machines. So they are actually more intelligent, smarter than human, or they are believed to be like that. And the main difference of them is that they will be able to take initiatives with or without human supervision, which may create an entirely different world, as you can imagine. So here is just another comparison of these technologies. Again, you may find this in the literature, so there are great discussions on this. So I'll just leave this for your information. When it comes to specifically AI applications in law enforcement, we can see that we can benefit from AI in terms of surveillance systems, real-time monitoring with AI analysis, investigation, AI-driven forensic analysis, for example, and cybersecurity. And all this have, of course, the potentials to help us for substantial improvements. Sometimes, for example, in terms of reducing the phishing attacks by 95%, which is a great improvement. Here is an analysis which we did with my colleagues from HEC, from ISTEC, from our institute. So that is showing the scientific landscape, how law enforcement actually can benefit AI, and what are those different topics and areas where we can see AI can be significantly improving our practices, like data-driven policing, predictive analysis by forecasting potential criminal activities, automated surveillance, cybersecurity, forensic analysis, autonomous systems, and the others can potentially help to improve policing and law enforcement practice in our lives. So what is important to understand is the evolutionary pathway that will be moving across this time. So we can see that AI actually can play different roles and can play more significant roles around time. At the moment, as of this year or next year, in the next few years, we can see that AI will help us to track and analyze some cyber threats. For example, it will provide us some automatic alerts, and it may detect some unusual activities. It may identify the source of the breach, and it may actually suggest us some of the correct entry points. And in the next stage, artificial general intelligence may profile and track a serial offender. It may process vast amount of information and create a comprehensive profile of the suspect. And also it can use a predictive power to tell us suspect's next move, and it may thus help us to prevent those future crimes. And when it comes to, again, to the third level, when we reach to the super intelligence level, we can see that people who may have no prior criminal records can be defined if they have any ideas, plans, or thinking to commit a terrorist attack. This can be already identified. So it may help the police force and law enforcement for preemptive detention, and also it may help to carry out these detentions and ensure public safety. So this is now, and the general intelligence soon, and super intelligence in again about a decade of time. So finally, I would like to just show a roadmap, a strategic roadmap, which provides us our key questions and some of the things that we can do. We basically need to act from now. So this is not only a foresight project, it's not a weak signal. It is a strong signal already. So we need to ask several questions immediately, like what actions we need to take to start implementing AI in law enforcement with some pilot projects, partnerships, ethical frameworks, AI literacy programs, and you may actually extend the list. And later, what actions will help scale the use of AI, ensuring legal and regulatory measures, addressing emerging societal concerns. And later, of course, we will ask some questions: what strategies should be implemented to make sure that AI remains a safe, effective, and trusted tool, as it may have some dual uses. In all cases, we need to embrace AI. That is a reality. We need to see this reality and find some ways of adapting it to transform our capabilities. We need to address those ethical concerns to make sure that there's fairness and transparency, and share best practices and insights. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Orten, thank you a lot. A very interesting presentation of our future with the AI. A little bit we're afraid a little bit of it, but I hope it will be good. So we have a question from Alexander. Alexander, please.
Okay. Hello, Ocean. It's very good to see you. I have a question. First, I would like to say that probably it's one of the first exercises which I see, at least foresight exercises, which deal with the future of AI for particular area of activity or sector or whatever. So, and although we did some, we are doing some for some software industry and so on. But anyway, I guess for social societal issues or different sectors, it also will be much more frequent in the near future, I guess. But my question is to your exercise. Did you, because when you mentioned that some person might be identified as a potential criminal or potential terrorist, it's I'm a little bit afraid of it. It's scaring me because it reminds me immediately about Big Brother and Orwell with his books. Yeah, did you consider this aspect, that it's kind of a limitation of freedom of individuals?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
Alexander. Yeah. So you have another question?
No.
Right. Okay. So first of all, great to see you too, as usual. So we're pleased to be here. Your question is very correct, of course. And one of the purposes of this presentation is a little bit provocative, to bring those issues on the table. As I said, the AI may have different uses by different groups and different parties, which may be sometimes in favor of us or sometimes against us, and it may create some threats. So what I mentioned there, of course, it falls under artificial super intelligence. We have at least a decade basically when the artificial intelligence outpaces human intelligence and can make some decisions, can also implement those decisions, sometimes even without human supervision. And yes, there are serious questions to be answered. I'm equally concerned as you. And as I said at the bottom of the roadmap, this ethical and social, cultural, legal concerns actually should be always at the forefront to make sure that we don't end up with such situations that AI goes in wrong hands, start labeling people as potential criminals or terrorists or whatever. I share your concern very much.
Okay, thank you, Yasin. Thank you a lot. I wish we will all get into a scenario where AI is a friend, not an enemy. Okay, thank you a lot. I think we can finish our section. I would like to thank all our participants, all our speakers, and of course our organizers and our entrepreneurs who helped us to meet together to share ideas in different places, in different time zones, and in different languages. Thank you a lot. It was a great pleasure to be with you in this symposium.
I will probably add a few words. Yeah, I enjoyed very much these 2 days and the excellent presentations, and I saw a lot of old friends, and I hope you also enjoyed it. At least we found some new ideas, and me personally, definitely. I wish everybody very good happy Easter, because this time Easter is the same dates for Orthodox and the traditional Christian church. So for all of us, very good feast and very nice weekend. Thank you very much, and it was a great pleasure to see all of you. Okay, bye bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.